I believe we're all here. I think we'll go ahead and call the meeting to order at 9 o'clock on this day, the 9th of October. Need a motion for the approval of today's agenda.
I move to approve the agenda.
A second.
All in favor, sign of aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Approval of the minutes.
I move approval.
Second.
All in favor, sign of aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. We get into the new business. Park manager.
Good morning. All right. So you should have two copies in front of you. You should have the original park manager position description. It should say original across. So if anyone doesn't have a copy of that, let me know and we can provide you with that. The other copy that you should have is a copy that looks like this that doesn't have any markings on it except for on the back, and it's highlighted. And I'll kind of explain why I highlighted it versus red marking it. There are very minor changes, so I do want to go through them and obviously make you aware of those. So currently, we're getting ready to start the recruitment process for a park manager. We haven't recruited for a park manager in a few years, so this is just an opportune time to take the position description that we currently have and modify it if we need to, because we're getting ready to do a recruitment. Okay, so I like to do that with any position that we have. If we haven't looked at it and made sure that it's accurate to what we need our employees to be doing, this is the time to do it before we go ahead and set out that recruitment. So we took the original, the park manager position, and we looked at that, and I worked with Betsy Tubbs. She's the senior parks manager for the Parks and Recreation Department, and asked her, is this accurate to what your park manager would be doing for you? And in talking with her about that, there were a few adjustments that we needed to make. So one thing that I do want to make sure that you're aware of is that this is not a union position, okay? So not a union position, simply a position that I'd be working with the actual manager on to edit. So just a few things that may look very different to you in comparison. We cleaned it up, okay? So we put some bullet points in. We made it very specific as to what they'd be doing, versus in the original one, it's very paragraph-like. So it's sometimes hard to follow when someone's actually looking at what types of responsibilities they would be truthfully entitled to. And then after we cleaned that up a bit, there were a few pieces that we added that currently our park managers are already doing, but it's not here in the position description. So we just want to make it so that it's well aware that you would be doing this kind of work. So for example, the repairs, ground structures, and associated equipment, all of those bullet points, that is something they are currently already doing. Additional responsibilities may include, but are not limited to. Those are items that the park manager is already doing. It just wasn't in the original position description. We want to make sure that those items are in this position description so that it's accurate, again, to what the employee would actually be doing. And then I do want to talk to specifically you all about the qualifications, because you all have jurisdiction over the acceptance of the qualifications that we would bring forward. So if you look at the original document and you look at the qualifications on that one, you'll notice that in that one it says 5 years of experience in park maintenance or an equivalent combination of training and experience. What I would like to add is I would just simply like to add the clause bachelor's degree in parks and recreation, turf management, natural resources, or closely related field, and continue to keep or an equivalent combination of training or experience which provides the knowledge and abilities necessary to perform the duties. The reason why I would like to add the bachelor's degree component is because a lot of times in the recruitment process, if there is someone who has a bachelor's degree, they're going to be looking to see, are you looking for that type of qualification? This does not prohibit those people who don't have a bachelor's degree. We recognize that there are some really valuable candidates in this specific field who don't have a bachelor's degree but have a wealth of knowledge in this field, and we would be more than happy to take them as well. But again, for the purpose of recruitment and getting those key words in there, I'd like to add the component of the bachelor's degree. That's all I have.
Any questions? Okay.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, we would need a motion to approve this item.
Do we hear a motion for the acceptance of the changes or the addition?
So moved.
All in favor, sign of aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same sign. So moved. Next on the agenda is the rules and regulations proposal for section 3 and 4.
Yes, so the Rules and Regulations project has been ongoing for several months now. Sections 1 and 2 are down below in old business, so we would be looking for any further discussion on those and a vote later on in the agenda. But today, I am officially proposing sections 3 and 4. Those were sent to you in advance in a packet to read. I just needed to get that on the record today that they were officially proposed at this meeting. If you want to continue to review those over the next month, you can just reach out to me directly with any comments or edits that you have. And then once we compile those edits, I'll send them out again for review.
Okay.
When you say
Turn
send
the
them
mic.
out, when you say send them out, do you mean by email?
We have been sending them by email, but you have a hard copy in front of you today. They're part of your packet.
Okay, thank you.
Can I ask a question on 1.4 related to records?
Okay?
There's, you strike chapter 2.82 and related practices and procedures, and then insert the words at city administrative policies. Is that a description of the Davenport Municipal Code, or is that an and? Just trying to clarify.
Yes, so it reads, in compliance with Davenport Municipal Code and city administrative policies regarding records maintenance and retention.
Got it. Need my glasses to read. Appreciate it.
Any other questions? Okay. Thank you. Quarterly trainings.
Do we need to take this chapter 1 and 2 up, or are we?
It's later on in the agenda.
Okay.
Okay, so following the August civil service meeting, Mr. Chair asked that we start implementing a quarterly training. So if there are any topics as we look ahead to the calendar that you are particularly interested in or think would be beneficial to the commission, you can let me or the chair know what those are, and we would be happy to bring those forward. Today, we just wanted to briefly review what the role of the commission is and then spend the majority of the time discussing the hearing procedure. So first of all, the main functions of the commission are really to establish those minimum job qualifications. So that's why we bring those forward to you like we did today. So that's a key function. Also guiding the Human Resources Department in the examination process. So we've worked really closely with all of you over the last year on what those procedures should be. So we brought forward Rule 2.2 that really outlined what our authority is in giving examinations, and then when we wanted a different process, what we would do and how we would bring that forward to you for individual approval. Beyond that, you obviously approve the list that we bring forward to you, so you actually certify those for us so that we can hire off of them. And then one of the most important and kind of key functions of the commission is really the hearing of disciplinary appeals, and that can be for removal, discharge, demotion, or suspension. All right, so the jurisdiction of the commission obviously is to hear and determine matters and appeals related to civil service employees only. We're going to move forward to the next slide about the Iowa Code. As a reminder, the city attorney is the attorney for the commission. If the commission ever identifies a conflict of interest between you as a body and the city council as a body, then we can request a third party outside legal counsel for you. All right, and then I'm now going to turn it over to Brian Heyer to go through the structure of a hearing.
I guess maybe the most efficient way to open this is just to ask you if you have specific questions based on the fact that you've all dipped your toes in the hearing office, or the hearing procedure once. And obviously there were questions that some of you had in that process. So maybe to open, I should just ask you what specific questions you have about hearings.
I've got a question. I mean, one of the things that, it's been a year and a half ago, or whenever that was, 2 years ago, when we were wondering about the hiring of outside counsel. And the idea that we could hire outside counsel pursuant to some code or some chapter of the code when there's a conflict of interest with the city council. Hard to understand where a disagreement actually is a conflict of interest. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Well, that typically arises in a situation where we are in the midst of an appeal hearing and an issue comes up from the dais about procedure, because the city code, the process requires either the HR department or the legal department to present the city's case on appeal. And if it's the legal department presenting the case and you have a legal question during the appeal hearing, it's kind of hard to get a legal opinion from the person who's presenting the case. It's not that the commission gets to hire an outside counsel. That's reserved to the city attorney, but in those situations, the process is there for an outside attorney to be hired by the city to provide that information to the commission. And I'm not sure if that answered your question, Commissioner Bollinger, or not.
It does, but I mean, and we're not going there at this moment. But 4.1 of the rules and regulations here says that the commission may hire an attorney pursuant to Iowa Code Section 427. And so I get where if we have a hearing and it's a procedural question and you are arguing your point and then giving us advice about why you think it is what it is, that's not necessarily a conflict of interest with this commission. It's just you are conflicted more than this commission has a conflict with the city. And so it's hard to understand a scenario in which, when you're arguing something to us, you wouldn't have a conflict and we wouldn't need a counsel on procedure if there's a question about it. So I'm just trying to get to the place of where wouldn't there be a conflict when you're arguing something to us and telling us what the law is on the procedure, and you're the only counsel we have, but you're arguing it one way and opposing counsel's arguing it another way. How is there not always a conflict when you argue something to us? I guess the conflict always arises when if the other side agrees, then we can agree with both of you, and as long as we don't disagree, we can move on. But
And I guess that's what the fulcrum point is. If there is no legal question coming from that side of the bench, then there's no issue. In the past, Mike Libby was retained to serve as attorney for the commission during hearings, so that there was somebody present who could deal with that. His role was very limited because it rarely came up.
sure, I think that's helpful to discuss before there's ever another hearing instead of during the hearing. I think it was fairly difficult in the last hearing. It was my first meeting, I think, just trying to grasp at where we were, and we were asking about whether we hire counsel or not, and it was just, at that moment, it probably wasn't the best time to discuss it. I just think, I don't know if we need to add something to 4.1 in here that says, there'll be a consult before any appeal hearing as to whether counsel is needed and whether, and having one ready to serve in case it is needed, because I think it was needed at that hearing. I certainly didn't know where we really stood. Maybe others did. I just think it would be helpful to set that up before you actually have the hearing, before you have the need. And I think it's appropriate for for this commission. It's so, I don't know what the 427 says, but hopefully it gives us direction as to what council, gives us some kind of list of council we can hire, or we can, if there's one or more, or somebody who's done it before and they're not conflicted, because I certainly don't want to go search and feel the chair shouldn't want to go search and try to find a lawyer that don't know whether they're qualified or not. It's the time of the hearing, and it's just kind of a little bit of mayhem if we don't deal with it ahead of time.
That's something that city legal can talk to HR about and present you with that information.
I have a question. I know that last time I asked to see additional pictures and you provided them. Are we allowed to ask for additional witnesses as well?
Can you flesh that out a little? I mean, typically my answer would be no. You're
Okay.
pretty much bound to the cases that are presented to you by the attorneys or the union reps. You are entitled to ask questions to clarify what's been presented to you, but you should not be in the position of calling for additional witnesses.
Okay, so when we asked for the pictures, the reason that we received them was because we asked for better pictures of what you had already provided, right? So typical hearing,
Clarification of what the end of the.
so typical hearing rules in terms of admission applies. Is that correct?
Yep.
Okay, thanks.
On that note, I just wanted to clarify that moving forward, so we've met to discuss how we can clean this process up as a team. Moving forward, we will make sure that you have copies of all of the exhibits from both parties so that you can review those and are not trying to view them on a screen. So that I just think that would help also moving forward.
Any other specific questions from the last hearing that?
Some of the questions that I had or was aware of that I've heard in serving in this capacity, some feel as if there's a risk of either legal or personal right, or repercussions on those individuals on the commission.
Can you clarify what you mean by serving? In
Serving, yes,
as commissioners?
yes.
Okay.
So expand on that a little bit.
Okay.
What are the
You're acting in a quasi judicial manner in that situation, and I'm not sure exactly what your concern is as far as liability, Commissioner Kelly, but you're acting in a quasi judicial manner, so you have absolute immunity for a decision that comes up in an appeal hearing, if that's what you're asking.
to some degree,
Okay.
but
Keep coming at me then.
for an example, just feeling threatened, or there's going to be some circumstances that are going to be unprohibited, beyond the control of the commission itself.
Can you give me an example?
Police brutality, harassments, threats,
Something happening
Yeah.
outside of this room?
right.
I mean, I guess, all right, then keep fleshing that out for me.
Well, you flesh it out. I mean, that's why you're here. We're
Okay.
asking you.
But I'm not sure what the situation is. You've made a decision. What I'm hearing is you've made a decision in this room and you're receiving threats outside of this room.
What is the outcome of the responsibility for the city for this commission as far as protection, I guess, for people that are serving? You say there's no legal.
If we make a decision that some outside group really doesn't like,
Yeah.
and we as individuals are harassed or questioned or intimidated, maybe it's up on appeal or gonna be up on appeal, do we have any mechanism to come back to you and say, hey, could somebody help me out a little bit here? My children have been threatened and I don't know who it was, and, you know, what can the city do for us?
So what I'm hearing is basically an investigation into a criminal matter. So the complaint would have to be filed with the police department, whatever's going on in the background, and the police department would have to handle it like they do any other criminal complaint.
I think they might be asking also, if we made a decision that was a mistake, are we personally liable?
If you made a decision that was a mistake,
Right, we could be wrong.
right, then it's up to the parties to appeal, and it goes to the district court or through the court system, and eventually it gets resolved. So, there's no
Or-
personal liability in that situation.
Personal liability, say, through questioning, somebody made a statement that somebody claims was defamatory.
I mean, when you have your judicial hats on in a hearing, you have absolute immunity.
Thank you.
All right? Are there procedural things as far as appeal hearings that we need to address, or?
No, I just think it would really behoove us to have, in situations where you're arguing it, we have somebody who's ready to just keep things moving along if there is a procedure question.
I understand you have a copy of the PowerPoint. I'm not going to read it to you because you're all capable of reading it. The only thing I would say procedurally from our last appeal hearing, I don't know how Des Moines does this, but the Des Moines Civil Service Commission goes into closed session to deliberate. You guys kind of did that by huddling together back by the flags, so people couldn't hear out here. And I'd just say that our appeal hearings are public, so your deliberations should occur from the chairs that you're in right now through the microphone so everybody can hear you. Now, while you were doing that, I went and talked to Jill Hartley, the attorney for the city employee, and we had that conversation between us. She wasn't objecting to what you were doing, and I wasn't going to object to it, so we didn't make an issue of it. But just for future reference, your deliberations should occur in public.
So wait a minute.
State law?
Is it on record?
Yes, yes.
I'd like to see the language that says that we have to deliberate in public, because I find that very uncomfortable. And I'd like, if Des Moines goes into closed sessions, I'd like to know why we can't.
I don't know how they do it legally.
Can we find out?
Sure, well, I can, can we
Ask
find
'em.
out how they're doing it?
Yeah, if you could,
I can
please.
present you with the reason why you have to be in open session.
But maybe you can contact their legal department and find out how they've made that determination.
Surely they have an opinion letter from somebody.
Okay,
Surely.
It doesn't mean it's right.
No, I agree. And you could at least learn something from their opinion letter if
But
it's
I
available.
agree that it's uncomfortable to do deliberations
Well,
publicly.
you know, it's an
Juries don't do that.
yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
we're both judge and jury
But-
at
but-
the moment.
And judges don't either.
But
Judges-
juries aren't a public body in an open meeting.
But yeah, this is a hybrid system and a hybrid situation, and calls for potentially different circumstances.
I'll get you some information on that.
Thank you.
Civil rights, rules and regulations, old business.
Yes, you have those in your packet. Those have been under review for several months now. So today, if you are agreeable, we would be looking for a motion to approve those.
Motion.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Just on 2.3, you've added in here that candidate materials must be submitted electronically for consideration. If somebody doesn't have electronic means to do that, do you have some place that they can go to that you advise them, I don't know, a library or someplace here that they can submit them?
Yes, they can do that in the library. We also have a public computer that's in the Human Resources Department main lobby area. And we routinely do have applicants who come in and submit from there.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Motion to approve?
So made.
Second.
All in favor, sign of aye.
Aye.
Post same sign. Good. Certification list for maintenance mechanic.
All right. So this last month, we had our testing for our maintenance mechanic position. This is over at the Water Pollution Control Division. The written exam was worth 30%, the interview worth 70%. Again, all qualifying candidates were sent a background investigation, and we have the list that's ready to be certified. This is a Teamster position, so as always with any Teamster position, we always make our Teamsters aware that we will be posting this. The minimum qualifications, I do just want to make sure that I hit on this because we did knock out a few candidates for not meeting the minimum qualifications. And the one in particular is having the 3 years of experience as a skilled full performance maintenance mechanic or stationary engineer or equivalent combination of training and experience. So maybe they went to a trade school and served, a 2-year program or a year program and maybe had a year under their belt or 2 years under their belt. We really do look at what they have written down in the actual application before we dismiss anyone. So for the maintenance mechanic, we had 12 applicants. Of the 12, 4 did not meet those minimum qualifications. 8 candidates were qualified and invited to test. 4 of those candidates passed the written examination and were then invited to the interview. All 4 candidates who interviewed did pass the interview component as well as the background check. So that was definitely a positive, and that's why we have 4 candidates on the list today for certification.
I have a question.
Sure.
Did you say physical examination too?
No, there's just a written exam and then an interview process
Okay,
for that.
Thanks.
Yep.
Sorry.
Nope, that's okay.
Any other questions? Okay.
I take that back. I do have one. Doesn't this say must pass the physical examination?
Yes, an actual physical, like it must pass a physical, like a drug and alcohol.
Okay.
Yes.
So we need a motion to,
I move to approve the list.
second.
Second.
All in favor, sign of aye.
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 Post same sign, so moved. If we can get those list. If that be it, motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All in favor, sign of aye. So adjourned, 9:30.
That's what I just